So first we're going to start off with the yarn. I chose a bulky weight yarn from Michaels in an off-white cream color, and I'm going to use 6mm knitting needles. To start the cast on, I'm going to be doing a long tail cast on. I will begin by looping my yarn around 50 times because we're going to be doing 50 stitches, and this will just mark where we want to start our first slip knot. Now that I've counted up to 50, I'm going to begin by doing our first slip knot just by twisting the yarn around, making a loop, and then twisting that loop through. Next, I'm just going to thread this onto the needle and start the cast on. So to begin, we want to take the shorter length yarn in front and then have the yarn that's connected to the rest of the ball behind. And then I'm just going to make this kind of shooter position with my fingers. And then you're just going to want to wrap it around your thumb and then over your middle finger but behind your pointer finger. And then I'll wrap it under the thumb, over the pointer, and then back through the thumb, and then pull. Alright, I'm going to show this again one more time, a little bit slowed down. So we want to go behind the thumb, over the pointer, back through the thumb, and pull. And then we're just going to repeat this process 50 times, so then we'll have 50 stitches on our needle at the end. Alright, now I have 50 stitches on my needle and we can start the actual knitting process. Now in order to make a hat, we're basically just aiming to make a big rectangle alternating between knit and purl stitches. Alright, so to start our knit and purl stitches, we're going to start with a knit stitch. So I'm going to start on the last stitch we just made, and I'm going to insert my hook from behind. And then I'm going to wrap the yarn around from back to front. I'm going to slide it off and pull it off the hook. And that will be our first knit stitch. Next will be a purl stitch, and so I'll pull the yarn to the front. Next I'll insert my needle into the front of the stitch. Then I'll wrap the yarn around. I'll tuck it inside and then pull off of the stitch. And then next will be a knit stitch, so we'll bring the yarn to the back. And so I will insert my hook to the back, wrap my yarn around from back to front, slip the stitch under, and then pull off the needle. Then I'll do a purl stitch, inserting to the front, wrapping around, tucking it under, and sliding the stitch off the needle. Basically, you'll just want to repeat this pattern of knit and purl stitches until you get to the end of the row. Alright, so I'm at the end of this row, and I just wanted to add a tip if you are struggling to remember if you need to do a knit or purl stitch next. Alright, so after every knit stitch, your yarn will stay in the back, and that means you'll need to pull it to the front to do a purl. And then, so here's me doing a purl. And then after the purl stitch, your yarn will stay in the front, which means you'll need to do a knit stitch next, and you'll need to pull the yarn back over. And then here's me doing a knit stitch. And then here is the last stitch, which will be a purl stitch if everything was done correctly. And then you'll want to turn your work over, and your first stitch will be a knit stitch because the yarn is in the back. So remember, that's inserting from the back, pulling from back to front, and then sliding off the needle. And then the next one will be a purl. So start in the front, then slide off the needle, and you'll basically just want to keep continuing this knit and purl pattern for 36 rows or until you have 10-inch rectangle. Alright, so here I'm on row 8, and as you can see, this knit and purl pattern has really shown through. The little braids are the knit stitches, and the stitches in between the braids are the purl stitches. And if you're ever lost on what row you are on, you can just count the number of little V's in the braid. And once you begin this pattern, it becomes a lot easier to tell which stitch you need to do next. As you can see, this next stitch is a braid, so that means it'll be a knit stitch and I'll need to move my yarn to the back. This next stitch is in between two braids, so that'll be a purl stitch, and it means I need to move my yarn to the front. And again, you'll basically just want to be continuing this pattern until you have about 10 inches of rectangle. Alright, so here I have finished about 36 rows, which measures to about 10 inches. And next I'll show you how to cast off. Alright, so you're going to want to need a crochet hook for this. And you'll want to have completed one row so that all the stitches are on one needle. And then you're going to want to insert your hook into that first little loop, pull it off onto the crochet hook, insert your hook to the next little loop, pull it off onto the crochet hook, and then tuck the first loop under the second loop so that you're left with one loop remaining. Next, you will insert your hook into the third loop, do the same, tuck under, and then so you'll have one loop remaining. You'll want to repeat this pattern until all of the stitches are off the needle. Alright, so now I've finished the cast off and it looks pretty much just like a big rectangle, and next we'll start with the cinching of the top to make it an actual hat. To do so, I will join the two sides together by creating a slip knot using the loop that we just created. Next, we will want to join both of the sides together by doing single crochets along this line. To do so, I will use the loop that we just created and insert my hook into the first of the V's that you can see right there. They're a little bit harder to see. And then next, I will insert my hook into the other side of the V's. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull through both of the V's that we just did. And then yarn over and pull through the two loops. And we'll just want to repeat the same process going into the next V and then to the other side. And then yarn over, pull through both of the V's, and then yarn over and pull through the two loops. And we will just continue this process until we reach the end of the rows. Alright, so here I am at the end of the last stitch, so I'm going to insert my hook into both of those V's, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through both loops. And now we can finish off our yarn and cut that end off. And as you can see, we've created a cylinder shape. And next we will want to start by cinching the top of the hat to make it into an actual hat shape and not just a tube. And to do so, I'm going to start by grabbing a fresh piece of yarn about 2 feet long and cutting that. And then I'm going to make a slip knot. And then I'm going to insert that onto my crochet hook and tie that into the top of the cylinder. And we want to make sure that we were starting the cinching on the opposite side of the stretchy side so that the stretch can be used for the bottom of the hat. And basically the principle of this cinching is to divide the hat into 4 kind of pieces, and so that will cinch each section of those 4 pieces that we create so that we'll have an even cinch. So I'm going to start by inserting my hook into one end and just tying in that slip knot that we created. And then I'm going to start by inserting my hook into one of the V's and pulling the yarn all the way through. And then doing the same thing on the other side. Making sure to leave a couple of V's in between each pull through. This is where I was kind of struggling just because my crochet hook was a little bit too big and I didn't have my smaller crochet hook, so I would advise to use a smaller crochet hook just so you can weave the yarn in easier. And then here I'm just going to pull that yarn all the way through. Then I'm going to turn my work over and do this on the other side. And then I'm going to keep doing this process until I've made it about 1/4 of the way down the beanie. And then I'm going to position the beanie to have 4 quadrants and continue this process with the other 4 quadrants. And as I'm going through, I'm continuing to pull and tighten the yarn to keep everything cinched. Now I'm done with the second one and I'm going to work on the other 2. Alright, here I'm done and I'm just going to end it by cinching everything and pulling everything really tight. And to finish everything off, I'm going to insert my hook into the middle and pull my yarn through, create a loop. And then pull my yarn all the way through. And this is pretty much everything finished with the beanie. And you'll pretty much want to flip everything inside out and fold up the brim. And for the last step, I'm just going to tie in all the ends. And here's what it looks like after tying in all the ends.